Once dropped to the MIDI Tools folder within the user library, they should automatically appear in two categories here, Generators and Transformers. So let's just go to, 1-bar clip and switch to the Metaflux. And we've got a chance the randomization will happen, a randomization mode with all these different algorithms to choose from, and the number of choices available to us within the selected note range. So I'll start playing this clip, which is empty, and as soon as I adjust this, okay, so what's going on here? We've got a density of 50%, that a Euclidean pattern of 16 steps filled 16 times will be filled 50% between C1 and G#4 100% of the time. The notes will be randomized. If I reduce the randomization, I can set a base note, which is what non-randomized notes that are still produced as per the density will come back to. So let me set the density to 100. So now we're getting all these A2s coming through here. If I set it down to C2, then you can see we have a bunch more C2 than the other randomized notes. So it allows you to set a home base from which the randomized notes will deviate. Luck is a pure random algorithm. I'm going to set it back to 100%. And with the density at 100, I'm going to demonstrate that we can create a Euclidean fill pattern. So here's 11 of the 16 steps filled. And every time I change the choices, it'll be that same rhythmic pattern. By default, it'll be a single voice. So I can change the voices here. If I make it two voices, then we get chords, okay? And the beauty of these chords is that they will all be generated with the same length and velocity as the other notes on that step. So unlike the seeds MIDI tool that comes with Live, if it happens to create a chord, it's totally just random, the two notes overlap. Whereas in this case, not only are the chords being generated on the specific Euclidean pattern I've specified here, now I've got 3 voices, and we can do this up to a maximum of 8 voices, which is maybe something you'd want to spread over a wider range of notes. But similarly, at 3, maybe we want it in a more narrow note range. Okay, so even with this Euclidean pattern of 16 steps filled 9 times, I can also use my note masking. And the note masking is based on the notes that are actually available based on the Euclidean pattern. So now, as I increase the choices, this randomization will only occur on those every third step of the Euclidean pattern. And there are only 24 notes between C1 and C3, so that's the maximum number of choices in raw semitones, which will then of course be forced back to the scale and key. I can also widen the range of velocity probability, and each chord will get 1 velocity assigned to it, which is much more natural to how notes are played. It's very seldom a pianist will play their thumb much harder than a pinky of the same chord. They're generally striking that chord with the same force from the entire hand. Okay, so that's an interesting pattern. I might mess with that. I think I'll try a different Euclidean rhythm here. Nice. And the fills, we could invert and see what else is there. And every time I do this, it randomizes new notes. Of course, we can invert the Euclidean pattern. So let me go back to the full unmasked pattern and invert the Euclidean pattern. And yeah, now we appear to be cooking with gas. So I'm gonna go and create a new clip here and use this opportunity to look at some of the other modes that Metaflux offers. Of course, we can rotate the current pattern and set the play direction of the Euclidean pattern forward, backwards. And the base rate is always defined by the grid. But what I want to do now is actually not worry about chords. I've got some nice chords up here, and maybe it'd be good to rename them as I go. But here, I want to set it down to a single note pattern. And it's still doing that Euclidean 7 fills of 16. So let's just do full 16th notes. And I'm not going to worry about the density. I can always change the density later. But just to hear the different modes here, I'm going to switch to drunk. So this gives us an inebriation control. So this is going to give us a pattern with very little pitch deviation. Okay, so maybe that's not so exciting, or maybe it's just what you're looking for. We can increase the range of the inebriation here. How far do the notes stumble from one another? But let's go to the fluid mode, which instead offers a lyricism. And let's change the range here. So it's going up and down in a way that's a little closer to the way that melodies are more typically and it's based on the motion of quantum particles in a fluid. It's a Brownian algorithm. And the less lyrical I get, the more purely randomized it is. So we've got a few more modes to get through here. The periodic will repeat a cycle of random values. At 100%, it'll always play the same value. So at higher values, it becomes more repetitive in the values it outputs. At lower periodicity, it becomes more random. And let's try the chord again. It's kind of working for me. Okay. Acyclic means it will take a range of notes before it repeats. So within the 12 notes, it'll randomize all of them before it will So the shorter the cycle, the more repetitive it becomes. So now we're just getting this 2-note pattern. And the exhaust mode will go through all the random values within this length, not necessarily in the same order, and only upon exhausting all those 5 random values will it start regenerating from that same set of 5 random values. And decide is just going to give you a binary choice between the lowest and the highest. And the weight is whether you want it to play the high note more often or the low note more often. So as I switch the weighting, it'll more often be the lower note rather than the higher one. We have our length and velocity controls down here to randomize all of those. Again, the Euclidean here, and the ranges here with this darker gray up above. Now it's nice to have a 2-note pattern, but what if I want a 3-note pattern? Well, that's where the luck chances come in. I can say, create a pattern out of 3 choices. So now those 3 choices are going to be divided across this range of notes. There we go. I think I've landed on something I'm pretty happy with. So let's leave it at that before we switch to our transformers.